my sorrows will leave.
Greetings from Castle Goring from Mickey, Aurora, and from me. Well, we have a lot of very weighty and somewhat disturbing matters to cover today. So, before plunging in to really a festering cesspool, I'm going to start off on what I hope is a high note. I'm going to post, after this preamble, a photograph of me on the weekend with Dan Wooten to celebrate his 40th birthday. It was held at the Old Sessions Building in Clerkenwell. To those of you who've seen Bridgerton, some of it was filmed there. The Old Sessions House is where convicts were sent to Australia, or according to Dan, people were also sent to their execution. Well, it's now a party venue, so life does move on, thank God. It was the most gorgeous party. And I have to tell you, what made it truly special was meeting Dan's parents, who were over from New Zealand. His parents gave a speech. His sister gave a speech. Dan held her cute little baby daughter. It was just, so touching. And Dan's partner was also on the stage. Really, it was just wonderful to see a happy family. And this explains why Dan takes the positions he takes on his show, because he believes in sterling values and family life. That's right. Also, some of you have complimented me, several of you actually, on my choker. And since my choker was rescued by my wonderful jewellers, J. McCarthy Limited, who used to be on Artillery Row, they were in Westminster for 220 something years. And in December, they moved to 49 Maddox Street in Mayfair. Princess Margaret used to have her tiaras cleaned there. I've run into all sorts of household names there, like Lady Antonia Fraser. They are the secret jewellers to the aristocracy. And they are just wonderful. So for what that's worth, thank you very much, J. McCarthy, for saving my choker, which really experienced some grave difficulties, which I will not go into. And here goes the postings. First of all, Dan and me, and then J. McCarthy, and then I will resume. Now, on a rather more serious note, the first question is from Lynn Perrichot or Perricott. I'm not quite sure how she pronounces her name. Dear Lady C, I am writing to you with a request to highlight Prince Harry's comments about smoking marijuana and taking hallucinatory drugs as a good, in quotes, practice. He obviously has no idea what he is talking about, nor the damage this can cause. I am the mother of a bipolar son. A few years ago, he decided to self-medicate and smoke marijuana. Just a few times, mind you. When his fragile brain snapped, He ended up in a clinic for 3 months. This is very serious. How dare Prince Harry promote drug use? I thank you and do hope that this comment finds you well. Very best wishes, Lynn. Well, where to start? First of all, I'm sorry to hear about your difficulties with your son. The problem with drugs is they can be mind altering. If they're not mood altering, which they usually are, that's why people take them, but they can be mind altering. And there is a very tragic case of a girl called Jennifer Spencer, who died age 29. She went to Peru on a yoga retreat. She took ayahuasca, or whatever it's called. Ayahuasca, I think it's called. The drug. It created a psychotic situation, and she ultimately committed suicide. Now, I have said before, I've seen in my own family where drugs, and alcohol incidentally is a drug. So I'm not only speaking about marijuana and other drugs. I'm speaking about even alcohol when it becomes a problem. Because my mother died of alcoholism, but she regarded, as Harry does, his drugs as a solution. She regarded alcohol and her drugs as a solution. Well, maybe before I get into this, I should actually read out another comment and then take them both together, because this is such a monumental subject that I think let's just focus on what two people's experiences were, and then we go on. Forest Nymph says, Lady C, you look absolutely beautiful. Please do an episode on your beauty routine. There's none. To lighten the mood for a moment. Factor 50 sunscreen every morning instead of moisturizer. Clean my face at night. If I have worn makeup, clean it off. And use Johnson's baby lotion as a night cream. That's it. I've never had a facial in my life. So, no beauty routine at all, except Factor 50 sunscreen, Johnson's baby lotion as night cream, and clean skin, and drinking lots of water. Anyway, William is correct. My son had similar issues as Harry. 2 years ago, he pulled a gun on me. That day, I truly thought that was the end, and I only got out of it by agreeing to whatever he wanted, money. You cannot underestimate the danger of an unstable person in your orbit. William is so correct, and I'm so glad that he took these extra and necessary precautions. You really have no idea what it's like until you have been there, and it's clear to me that William should be safe rather than sorry. Still makes me shake in fear. So glad William has the foresight I didn't. I assume, given this, they will not receive an invitation to the coronation. P.S. That choker is stunning. Well, we've covered the choker. And they have received or will receive an invitation to the coronation. That's not a part of the risk assessment. Ellie Mayo responded to this comment by saying, I hope your son was incarcerated for robbery at gunpoint. Oh dear, oh dear. And Forest Nymph says, at Elimeo, no, I gave the money willingly, but it was the basis to commit him for only a week and a 2-year restraining order. Now, sadly, this covers a lot of ground that is really, in normal circumstances, best avoided, but drugs are a huge problem nowadays. Practically every family is somehow affected, if not by taking, by the effects of taking somehow. Harry is plainly using drugs as self-medication. I've said it before, he's admitted it in his book. You know, what constitutes an addict? I would have said that of what Harry has said, to many people he would qualify as a drug addict. And in fact, it's rather welcome that he has been so forthcoming with this information, because it clarifies matters where the rest of the family is concerned and shows the public what the family has had to be dealing with. Also, Meghan, of what Harry has said and of the previous admissions she has made, being no stranger to drugs either, is at best an enabler, and I say at best. Doria, I understand from people who knew her when she was married into the Markle family, and I know this from a member of the Markle family, was heavily into the use and abuse, and we will stop there for legal reasons, of marijuana. You're dealing with people who, in Jamaican terms, used to be called potheads and ganja smokers, with a ganja mentality. Now, ganja mentality is a very particular thing. To anybody who's West Indian, they'll know it. Soon come. Did Cara run him down? Well, so be it. And of course, no pothead is ever to blame for anything. No drug addict is ever to blame for anything he or she has ever done. Their total lack of responsibility, but also, it's not only the lack of responsibility, it is the effect it has upon certain people. Not everyone has their thought processes distorted, but many do. And it is arguable that Harry hasn't had his thought processes significantly distorted. Certainly it makes you more amenable to persuasion by people who appear to be sympathetic. And nobody is more sympathetic than a hustler who's trying to marry you and enable you into creating a great fortune and great position for them. I say that as a statement of fact, not saying that this is what happened with Meghan and Harry for legal reasons, but this is a statement of fact. Hustlers who wish to marry men for position, who are drug addicted or drug takers, and who encourage them to do it or stand by and let them do it, are at best enablers. And especially if they then have worldly and financial motivations for keeping the target amenable to their persuasions. It's not what decent people do, in my opinion. I had a choice when I realized that my husband had a drink and a drug problem. And I understood that I could destroy any possibility of my marriage working if I insisted that he had to be sober in AA and off all drugs. Otherwise, our marriage was not going to be proceeding. And I'm putting aside the physical violence part of it now, because that was a whole related issue, I thought, but also it was something that had to be dealt with, but it couldn't be dealt with somebody who was stoned out of his mind. And because what drugs do is they lower your inhibitions. They affect your amygdala. They affect various parts of your brains. They disinhibit you. They take the brakes off you. And as they used to say in AA and Al-Anon, don't stand between an alcoholic and his bottle because you're going to be mowed down. Well, I stood between my alcoholic and his bottle, and I gave him a choice, and he tried to wangle his way around it. And when he couldn't wangle his way around it, we did get divorced, rather nastily and messily and very unattractively, but we got divorced. I would respectfully submit that anybody who is married to somebody who is using and clearly abusing drugs, to the extent that they are abusing their family and attacking not only a whole nation for false accusations in terms of racism, but one of the oldest and most revered institutions on earth. These are very dangerous, destructive people. And had I been in Meghan's shoes, I would have insisted that he clean up his act. Because I'll tell you something, I know this from personal experience. There is no possibility of any human being having a spiritual regeneration when he or she is on drugs. Nor is it possible to say that you are solving your problems by taking drugs, unless you are a diabetic and you're taking insulin, or you suffer from manic depression and you take stabilizing drugs. There are some conditions where you absolutely have to take drugs. But most drug addicts are, and I've always said this because I'm regrettably awfully familiar with drugs and the effects they have upon people. I've always said most people who take drugs are using drugs as a bridge between one part of their personality and another, which either is disconnected from them or they would like to develop. There are other ways of doing it. I know what I'm talking about. I did it. If I could have done it, they can do it. You want to be happy? Develop the tools for happiness. You want to be stable? Develop the tools for stability. Work on yourself. Go into therapy, and don't get a therapist who tells you, as Dr. Gabor Mate, who in my opinion is someone to be deeply deplored in terms of being a therapist if he is encouraging people to take drugs, because that's not the solution. That is a palliative. And people need to understand that their underlying issues. You can connect with your better self. Just because it lies fallow doesn't mean it's not there. And if it's not there, then you are dealing with people who have serious personality disorders. And drugs are not going to help. They are actually going to worsen the situation. Now, it would appear that both Meghan and Harry have not only serious personality disorders, but serious emotional issues, shall we say. I was absolutely stunned that any medical doctor could do some of the things Gabor Mate did in that PR exercise. Let's be clear about what it is. It is a marketing exercise promulgated and most likely created by Penguin Random House, who is supposed to be a reputable publisher, to push two of its authors, Harry on the one hand and Dr. Gabor Mate on the other. Well, if what Dr. Gabor Mate's stance vis-a-vis Harry was, and I have no reason to doubt that it was anything else, Dr. Gabor Mate has never factored into his equation the fact that one bad trip can ruin a whole life irreversibly. That's why Dr. Gabor Mate, people shy away from certain psychedelics and certain other drugs. One bad trip can ruin a whole life, as has been proven by Jennifer Spencer's suicide. One trip. That's one person too many. How dare you take the chance with anybody's life? Who the hell do you think you are? It's unbelievable. I mean, what you're doing is tantamount to a tobacco company saying, well, you may not die of lung cancer, so smoke. Yeah, not everybody who smokes dies of lung cancer. Not everybody who smokes gets heart disease. But the evidence is that a discomforting number of people do, and the same thing is so with drugs. My ex-husband had a mescaline, whatever it's called, where the trip returns. I've forgotten the name for it now. I think it was over a year after he'd taken mescaline. He had a bad trip, a return bad trip. Oh, unbelievable. And they are pushing drugs that cause some people to have such serious mental illness that they commit suicide. How responsible is that of Penguin Random House? I think it's a total disgrace. And as for Harry, I mean, the one good thing to come out of all of this is that he has shown himself to be so deeply flawed, because really, nobody in their right mind can have respect for a drug addict who thinks that rather than doing the work on himself that would be required to stop being a spoiled brat and grow up and become a decent human being, that he can indulge himself and try to sell us a line. But also, Penguin Random House has sold everybody who bought into that show a line. Because you, whether you had bought the book or not, you had to buy the book to access the show. So it is a massive marketing exercise. It's a con. It's nothing but a con. They didn't promote it as selling the book. They promoted it as a live show. Well, how live was the show? Because did anybody have real access? It appears little or none. Well, certainly no accessible responsiveness, let's put it that way. Although I did notice that Dr. Mattei had the unmitigated goal to diagnose Harry on air as having attention deficit disorder, which of course is just one of the many things Harry does suffer from. I'm beginning to think that Harry also suffers from sociopathy and total amorality. And I'm not sure that Dr. Gabor Mattei doesn't suffer from blind spots morally as well. But we won't go there right now. You know, also Harry made some very interesting admissions. He said he and Meghan never row in front of the children, and implied that that's as a result of his parents rowing in front of him. Harry, do I need to remind you that your mother is the one who used to verbally attack your father and pursue him room to room while he tried to escape from her? He wasn't attacking her. She was attacking him. How come she's a deity and he's dreadful? I just ask that question for what it's worth. You know, when you want to get to develop yourself spiritually, a spiritual process is the growth of right over wrong, good over bad, constructiveness over destructiveness. It is not feeling good. It is not taking drugs in any way, shape, or form, or anything mind-altering and mood-altering to feel better. There is a difference between what is spiritual and what is sensational. It appears to me that neither Dr. Mattei nor Harry understands the difference between sensationalism and spiritualism. They both, I should say spirituality actually, because spiritualism is something else. Oh, slip of the tongue, sorry. You cannot enrich yourself spiritually when you interfere with the natural process. That is when you are using any external substance to alter your perceptions or your feelings. Because what enriches you spiritually is that you develop them and thereby alter yourself. There is no shortcut and there is no easy answer to this. And it seems to me that both Dr. Mattei and Harry have decided, oh, well, we'll just take a few shortcuts. And Dr. Mattei is doing it and using the fact that he's a Holocaust survivor. Give me a break. The man was a year old when the war ended. I mean, Holocaust survivor. How much longer are we going to have to put up with people hiding behind and puffing themselves up with terrible things that happened to other people but didn't happen to them? And as for Harry being at the age of 12 when his mother died, I mean, until the 20th century, a good 30 or 40% of this world's population either lost a parent or a child by the time they were 30. There's nothing unique and new about losing a child or a parent, except since the advent of penicillin. I mean, wise up, wake up, grow up, and understand that you're dealing with reality. You're not dealing with fantasy. But they are. They're selling you a lie, a damnable lie. And the lie is you can shortcut it. You don't have to put in the necessary work to develop yourself spiritually. You can smoke grass, take ayahuasca or whatever the hell it's called, and maybe a little bit of heroin, or what about some cocaine? And coke, he says, did nothing for him, but grass did a lot. Well, we are seeing the evidence of what the grass and the cocaine and everything else he's taken, because he's taken other stuff as well, which for legal reasons I cannot go into. But doubtless at some point he's gonna go into it as well, because he suffers from incontinence. This is an outrage, in my opinion, but it's a welcome outrage because it shows what we're dealing with. And we started this off with two ordinary, innocent people who have been the victims of situations within their family. We have the Spencer family as well. Jennifer Spencer's, not Diana Spencer's family, although we could throw her and her family in for good measure as well. And this is promulgated as enrichment spiritually or entertainment. And it's not done with a warning that if you're suffering, there's a good reason for it. Your body is telling you, your being is telling you something is wrong, how to put it right. And you can put it right. I know what I'm talking about. I should have been a suicide, according to one of my psychiatrists, and I'm not, very definitely not. You can make it. You simply have to do what you have to do. There is no way of faking it. I have always said, people who try to cheat nobody so effectively as themselves. Harry is a cheat, and so is Dr. Gabor Mate. They are trying to tell you that you can get from here to New York by taking drugs and puffing weed. You can't. You need to get on a plane. It's as simple as that. But because they're doing it in the ideas way and in terms of feelings and the realm of the esoteric, people think, quite rightly, it's an outrage, but others will think, oh, yeah, let me try it. Gullible people will think, oh, well, if it's good enough for a prince, and also a prince is suffering. Harry's suffering, with due respect, is perfectly mundane. There's nothing in his book that is exceptional in terms of suffering. Nothing. There is nothing out of the ordinary that has ever happened to Harry that was so extraordinary and terrible that he deserves to be put into a special category. But he puts himself into one because he doesn't understand that he was born into a special category, being very overprivileged and spoilt. And many of the problems he has are entirely due to the fact that he had bad parenting from the word go. Now, for all the failings of my parents and my upbringing and all the traumas and terrible things that happened, and I would respectfully submit that seeing your grandfather's brains on the floor at the age of 13 is rather more traumatic than many a thing that Harry would like to believe happened to him. He seems to not understand that other people have survived real traumas. He hasn't. He has wallowed in what he regards as his lack, because he wasn't given everything. He was just given 99%. He wasn't given 100%. Therefore, he is deprived. Harry, you're not deprived. You are a spoiled brat. If you were deprived of anything, it was discipline and consequence. That's what you were deprived of. And Dr. Matty, all the drugs in the world aren't going to solve that problem. And I'm going to end on another note in terms of Harry's danger to those two children. Harry makes a big point in the show, because it's a show. Don't kid yourself. It's a show. It's a cynical money-making exercise to sell more books so that Random House can lie and tell you that the book is the most successful book ever, when it's been heavily discounted from the word go, and nobody's, to the best of my knowledge, ever paid full price for the book. And even then, it's falling off the bestsellers list quicker than you can say boo. But what does Harry do? He admits to smothering, and the word he uses on more than one occasion is smothering his children with love. Harry, smother love is not love. Smother love is indulgence. Smother love is destructive. Possibly, Meghan might actually have taught you all about the virtues of smother love, because she has been petted and pampered all her life by both parents. Well, look at what she did to her father. And as for the mother, the less said about that pot-smoking woman, the better. Everybody's such a racist in the royal family. I mean, you know, they actually had the unmitigated gall to not bow down and worship before me and my daughter. And I'm a social worker. Please spare me. Smother love. He says it. He admits it. Smother love. And he thinks that smother love is love. Harry, read your Bible. Inordinate affection is as bad as no affection whatsoever. And all this nonsense as well about the fact that you weren't hugged by your father. You were over-hugged by your mother. Read my books. The constant skiving off from school so that you could sit down and cuddle with her when you were a little boy. It's got you. Look at where it's got you. You are now one half of one of the most reviled couples on earth, all because of your conduct and your attitudes and your admissions. And you're going to smother your children. And if you don't smother them with love, you say, oh, that you're going to somehow not be doing your duty as a parent. I have to tell you, I really pity those two children. But I think we can look forward to the confessions of Archie and Lilibet down the line, and to discover the nightmare of the drug taking household where there was no responsibility for their personal choices. Everybody was blamed for everything. And then he has the unmitigated gall to say he doesn't regard himself as a victim. But his every message is he's a victim. But that's very druggy. On the one hand, you make the accusation and you beg for the sympathy, and on the other hand, you deny. Denial, denial, denial. It is a classic of drug addiction and drug addicted people and people with a propensity, unhealthy propensity for drug taking. Never, ever any accountability and perpetual denial. And to hopefully end on a rather less fraught and intense note, I am going to revert to a question from Mon R. Key. Some of these names. It's actually Ellie 76 because that's what she says at the end. So, Lady C, what are your thoughts on Chris Rock commenting on Megxy during his live show on Netflix? I thought it interesting that the same network allowed the skewering. Loved that her name was on Chris's notes shown in the intro. Love your channel, insight and communication. Ellie 76, thank you very much. Well, Netflix is a cynical an organization and a money-making enterprise as Penguin Random House. Penguin Random House has no loyalty to the general public in terms of irresponsibly pushing drug taking as a solution instead of a problem. And Netflix has no problem with pushing pro and anti agendas where its contributors are concerned. So you have the Crown with a series of lies and willful misrepresentations, posing as dramatized truth when it is dramatized lies, dressed up as truth and posing as truth by attaching the false narrative and false characterization to true once living or presently living characters. And then you have them, for instance, in The Crown, lying about everybody. Then you have Harry and Meghan, who are supposed to be members of the royal family. And you would have imagined, until, of course, recent admissions to the contrary, that they would be sufficiently sane and sensible and in touch with reality as to understand that they were supposed to have some duty of loyalty and care to the institution whence they derive their privileges, but no, clearly none. But then again, what do you expect from druggies? Because I don't expect that all druggies are going to be nasty pieces of work like Harry and Meghan, but I certainly do expect that nasty pieces of work who have lowered their inhibitions will release the genie from their bottles the way Meghan and Harry have done, and she has encouraged him to do. So you have Netflix right there with some members of the royal family being trashed and others colluding. So in other words, it's like members of the Rothschild family joining the Nazi party. Because let's be clear, that's exactly what it's like. And then, what else do you have? you now have Chris Rock, very welcomed. And I think good for Chris Rock, and I suppose you could almost say good for Netflix. Except I deplore double dealing, and I deplore triple dealing even more. However, I think it shows what Netflix really thinks of Harry and Meghan. And you know, they furthered a false agenda with Harry and Meghan's Netflix nonsense. And a very damaging agenda, not only to the royal family, but to the Commonwealth. Remember? Empire 2.0? Do we remember that little crack amongst others? And now they have Chris Rock, more or less speaking the truth about what an odious hustler and, quite frankly, common piece of trash Meghan Markle is, in, by the sound of it, Chris Rock's view. And Chris Rock makes the very valid point that Meghan is so full of the brown stuff that she failed to understand, but then again, why would she have understood? Because she spent her whole life posing as white, that even black people, which she's always been at pains to point out she's not, speculate about the colour of their children's skin. Chris Rock has quite rightly called her out on her hypocritical abuse, because that's what he's called her out on. Good for him, and I suppose good for Netflix for allowing the truth to be finally told, because they went out of their way to prevent the truth being told in The Crown, even using my books against me in The Crown. They've used Harry and Meghan's Netflix show against the Crown and the British people. And now I suppose you could say they're being responsible rather late in the game and allowing some version of the truth to emerge. That's my view on it. And I'm delighted that Chris Rock has been given the platform he has been given, and that he has taken advantage of it to skewer that rancid piece of meat. Because, in my opinion, that's what she is, a rancid piece of meat. Dangerous, damaging, and of her conduct and his, wicked, promoting drug taking, in my opinion, is wicked. It's Joe McKinley says, how does this work if the coronation is in May and they don't have to leave until June? Will Prince William and Princess Catherine and the children be somewhere else for the coronation? Or have I misunderstood? Just worried. Joe McKinley, I don't think you need to worry too much. Catherine and William have a very comfortable residence in London in Kensington Palace. Harry and Meghan have no access to Kensington Palace. None whatsoever. So, I don't think you need to worry, but I don't think the threat would be necessarily quite so specific or focused as you are thinking it is. So much as we have just seen from Harry's spectacle with Dr. Gabor Mate. You never know what he's coming up with next. Oh, I'm not a drug addict. I simply take drugs all the time. And did you check out those pupils? My God. I mean, they're bigger than most people's eyeballs. Have you noticed how very unnatural Harry's pupils always are? And when I say always, I pretty much mean always. Because their eyes are dilated to the point of Peruvian adventures. Or then they are so focused, or like pinpricks, that I feel a cold coming on. I know it doesn't do anything. I know that Coke doesn't do anything for me, but Beulah, go peel me a grape and bring me a Coke nevertheless. Can of course, Coca-Cola. Cocaine does nothing for me. I permanently have a head cold, however. So does my wife. Well, I suppose they have a lot to sniffle over. Well, that about wraps it up for today. I hope you have enjoyed this. If you have, please remember to keep the questions and comments coming in, because this cannot be done without you. I need to know what you find interesting for us to speak about. Thank you so much. God bless. Goodbye. And if you have enjoyed this, please like, share, subscribe, press the notification bell, and take good care. God bless. Bye-bye.